When it comes to looking at plants as how they are being used for medicinal purposes, whether that's to treat disease, to try and treat illness and injury, I think we have to first acknowledge the idea that there have always been people wanting to help one another. They don't want to see the other humans around them suffer. And so they've looked to the different plant products. They've looked to everything around them to try and ease that pain and suffering. And when we look historically at groups of people, what we see is there is consistency. Every group of people had one or two individuals in their group who was charged or given this role of being the doctor, if you will, the person who will treat illness and disease and injury. So we see that kind of consistency, that there was one person or a small group of people who was given this role. And then the other thing we see is that the people were experimenting with all of the different plant products that they had available to them. Now, there were some animal products incorporated as well. We see feathers and bones and skins get incorporated into the process of trying to treat illness and injury. But we really want to focus on those plants because primarily it was and still is the plants that are being used for their medicinal properties, for the compounds that they have that can treat illness, injury, and disease. Now, the one thing we need to notice or keep in mind is that our knowledge today is based on the knowledge of previous people experimenting. We only see the successes. Any failures would not have been passed from one generation to the next. So when these people were trying out leaves, when they were mashing up different fruits and maybe spreading them on infected wounds, the one thing that we won't know and won't have record of is all the things that they tried that didn't work. Of course, if they weren't able to treat the disease, if the person died, they may never use that thing again. And the other thing we need to keep in mind, especially as we get into the next chapter on poisonous and allergen plants, is that sometimes they would have been experimenting with plants that have poisonous compounds. And so they may have inadvertently killed people or caused really horrible reactions. Think about taking something like poison ivy the first time and anybody ever tries this and rubbing it on a wound. Wow, would that have been the wrong thing to do for that individual? So our knowledge is really based on the successes of the past. So I always want to stop and sort of give a shout out or give a moment of remembrance to all the poor individuals who didn't make it in that process of experimentation. Now, of course, we have modern science, so we can extract individual compounds and we can test on model organisms like blackworms or shrimp or just on packages of cells. That's kind of the beauty of stem cells, is that we can grow tissues, we can grow cells and experiment on them without having to use a whole organism. So we're really at a neat place in science where we can extract compounds, we can see whether or not they have an effect, whether they can kill a cancerous cell or they can alter the problems that we are seeing. So in this chapter, we try to make this a really discrete set of information. The information being presented is about plants that we definitely know will treat and can be used to overcome injury, disease, and illness. But we also know that there are a lot of plants out there where we have strong correlation. And I first want to start with that correlation situation. So even today, we see the doctrine of signatures being used in order to find things or to recommend things to use in order to treat illness, injury, and disease. And the doctrine of signatures really focuses on this idea of if you have a problem with a specific organ or a specific part of the body, we're going to look to the natural world to see if there is something out there that looks like that organ or has the same color as that organ, and we're going to recommend using that to treat problems with that part of your body. And so for me, the classic example, of course, is always using kidney beans. And the use of kidney beans in order to treat any problems with the kidneys is, well, I can see where they would have drawn this correlation. If you have problems with the kidneys, generally it's going to show up as problems urinating. So let's think about causes of urination problems. One of the most common would be urinary tract infection. We now know that a urinary tract infection is caused by bacteria, most of the time species of E. coli bacteria. Those bacteria are starting to grow up the urethral tube, they get into our bladder, they get all the way to our kidneys and can cause all kinds of problems. Lots and lots of irritation. Another problem that can happen are kidney stones. We now know that kidney stones is the accumulation of calcium. And there's really isn't anything that you can do for that except for get them out. But I can see where at the time you have this person who's suffering from a urinary tract infection. They're suffering from kidney stones and they are in excruciating pain. They are really uncomfortable. And people would have seen inside of bodies. They would have seen what a kidney organ looks like, and it has this kind of deep red color and it's kind of shaped like a bean. And so then the recommendation would be, all right, you need to eat more kidney beans. This will solve your urinary tract problem. This will solve your kidney stones. And while we know that there are a lot of good things in beans, right? There are proteins and there's lots of lipids, like we discovered back in the legume chapter. There's nothing in here that's ever going to help us with our urine problem, with our kidney problems. It's not going to help with that organ. So sometimes the doctrine of signatures got things wrong. But sometimes the doctrine of signatures got things right. And this is what I think is really interesting, is as scientists, we've gone back and tried to discover, okay, what was it about this treatment that was working? So let me start with some pretty common things that maybe you yourself have used to treat illness, injury, or disease. And let's talk a little bit about why that might have worked and how we as scientists have gone, revisited this, and found better treatments today. So I want to start here with some moonshine. Oh man, alcohol. Alcohol was used in two main ways. Alcohol was used to disinfect, and it was used, of course, to help numb the pain. Hopefully you've seen enactments of people who have had to have limbs and other things severed, and the only thing that they had available to help ease that pain was some alcohol. Now, if you've ever dealt with alcohol and gotten it into an open wound, you know that this burns like crazy. It is by no means wonderful, but it will disinfect. It will kill the bacteria. Maybe not this stuff because it has a lot of sugar in it. We want that pure, green, really disgusting to drink alcohol. That is the stuff that works for disinfecting the surface. It helps to kill bacteria. And if you drink enough of it, it too will make you numb. So how have we improved upon this? Well, the way how we've improved upon this is with things like Bactine. And what I love about Bactine is it has both of those qualities that we're looking for in alcohol. It will disinfect an area, so it kills bacteria. Yay to that. And that's also an anesthetic. So it makes that area kind of numb. Now, you're not going to drink this as anesthesia to put you under, say if we have to remove a limb, but at least if you have a wound, we can make it numb while at the same time stopping any additional bacteria from entering into the wound and potentially into your body. So yay, synthetic medicine, being able to take what we used to use and make it into a better form. Another thing that I have here, another pairing that I have, is if you get a sore throat, if you get a cold, maybe you've had honey in hot tea. Honey in hot tea does two things. The honey is that kind of viscous solution that will hopefully start to coat your throat to alleviate some of the itchy, raw feeling that we have when the virus is attacking those cells. And the other thing is the heat. The heat from the tea can help open up the airway passages. It will help relax some of those smooth muscles. Heat is known to do that. So a little bit of heat, a little bit of honey can help open the airway passages, release some of those smooth muscles, and of course, coat the cells that are feeling so raw. So how have we done better? We have the synthetic compounds and things like sucrets and other cough drops that we can now take instead, which ends up being more effective, getting at that same function though, soothing and opening the airways. Now the one thing I'm still researching, and I've been researching this for some time, is maybe you have had a dog and your dog had diarrhea or vomiting or constipation and you were recommended to give it pumpkin. And everybody swears by this. Oh my gosh, my dog had diarrhea, I gave him pumpkin, it cleared it up. Oh my gosh, my dog had constipation, I gave him pumpkin, it cleared it up. And I started going, but wait. What in the pumpkin could simultaneously stop runny poop and also make a dog want to poop? Like, those are two very opposite reactions. How can this one thing do both of those? I've also heard about pumpkin for upset stomachs. We've got better stuff for all of that now. So I'm still researching the pumpkin, and to be honest with you, I don't have any good, clear research on what in pumpkin might be working for constipation or for diarrhea. I think with the constipation, we've got some insoluble fiber that would help. Insoluble fiber can come from lots of things, not just pumpkin. So that would always work for constipation, but I'm not sure if there's any other compounds. I'm going to keep researching it because this Doctrine of Signatures suggestion for dogs, I haven't heard of much for humans. Maybe it works for humans too. We're all mammals, right? This Doctrine of Signatures suggestion is still very, very common for a lot of our animals having digestive issues. So let's talk a little bit more about Doctrine of Signatures recommendations and where people kind of got it right. Here I have some carrots, and as we talked about earlier this semester, anything with this kind of orange color has a lot of vitamin A, and as we know, vitamin A is helpful for building functionality of the eye in addition to many other things. So recommending carrots for the eyes, that was actually a really good suggestion, and that persists today. When it comes to the tomato has often been recommended for problems with the heart. Scientists several years ago did isolate a molecule from tomatoes called lycopene. It turns out lycopene is helpful with cholesterol, which means eating tomatoes can actually be good for your heart. So again, another thing with the Doctrine of Signatures that we got right. Another thing with the Doctrine of Signatures is cranberries. Now this is something a lot of women have known about. If you get a urinary tract infection, drink cranberry juice. It turns out that what cranberries are doing is they do have compounds that make the cells in the urethra very slippery, which means the bacteria can't grow. So drinking cranberry juice, if you have a urinary tract infection, in fact, was a very good suggestion. We now know this with lots of research showing what are cranberries, the compounds in the cranberries, and what they are doing to stop the urinary tract infection. But note, you can't drink the cranberry juice with all the sugar in it. That's actually going to have the opposite effect, because if you get too much sugar in your urine, you're going to be encouraging the bacteria to grow, because bacteria eat sugar. So you have to drink that pure 100% super bitter cranberry juice, because these things do not taste good on their own. We need lots and lots of sugar to make them palatable. But the only way we can use them as a medicine is if they do not have any sugar in them. Another Doctrine of Signatures suggestion that we now know is actually correct is suggesting green tea. Now, green tea does have lots of antioxidants. Scientists have been isolating and removing the antioxidants individually to see that they are scavengers inside of our cells, grabbing all of the destructive molecules. And so drinking green tea actually does have medicinal qualities. Now we're going to talk about green tea when we get into the chapter on stimulating beverages, because it does have some caffeine and can also help in that way as well. And so remember, this chapter will have some branching over into other chapters, or other chapters should have plants that should be brought into this chapter. When we talk about plants that are being used for their psychoactive purposes, we'll talk about the poppy plant. And of course, from the poppy plant, we get opioids. What better treatment for pain Yes, we can get aspirin from the willow tree. And that's really cool. I mean, chew on some willow bark, get some aspirin, treat your pain. But some pain, really, aspirin isn't going to cut it. Think about the pain from surgery. Think about the pain from removing a limb. You're going to need the opioids for that, or something a lot stronger. Unfortunately, the opioids, as we'll talk about, also have addictive properties and can also be used for their psychoactive purposes. So we've got this kind of duality where, yes, it's great in the medicinal field, but at the same time, it also has some really potentially scary consequences from use. This also includes fentanyl. Fentanyl that was originally used as an anesthetic and now is being abused in really scary ways because so little can do so much damage. When we talk about poisonous and allergen plants, some of those poisonous and allergen plants can also be used as herbal remedies. And this is where we really have to start to question, what are we doing? Are we using something because we have correlation data? Some people have taken St. John's wort and it has eased their symptoms of menopause, or it has eased their symptoms of Alzheimer's, or whatever it is. Does that mean that the plant has a compound that's actually causing that effect? And this is where we have to be very careful as consumers, because a lot of times we're going to be presented with pseudoscience. We're going to be presented with things that look sciencey. It looks like this person did research on this plant product to get to this result, and yet that's not what they did. They didn't do a double-blind study. They didn't do that methodical, sequential, first let's start with the model organism. Once we have good data there, then we can start to test on humans, and then we got to control for all of the things in humans, because humans love to have a response. There's been a lot of research in the placebo effect, and that all I have to do is give you a pill, just a pill with sugar, or a pill with nothing, just some filler in it, and you will have a response to whatever it is I told you. Your blood pressure is going to lower when I give you this pill, and then I go and I measure you, and your blood pressure has lowered. We can really think ourselves into a lot of different reactions. That's a whole side of science that is just developing and people are starting to get into, is this really strong connection between what we think, what we want, what we hope will happen, and what our bodies and our physiology will do. Well, that's a whole other discussion for a whole other situation. But I did want to expose you to it because when we're talking about plants being used for medicinal purposes, we've got that sort of tried and true. We've isolated the compound. We have tested it in model organisms. We've tested it in humans in multiple different ways. We have actually gotten down and seen causation as our technology has gotten better. We've seen the mechanism in action. We've seen that compound sit in a receptor on a cell membrane and the result inside of the cell. We have seen that in action. We have causation. Then we've got a whole wide set of things that's just correlation. I don't want to see any of you end up taking something that we find out later is really damaging. With ginkgo biloba, it was being pushed really, really heavily for people who were having memory problems. Not only students, but also elderly people who were experiencing dementia and Alzheimer's. What we discovered is that ginkgo biloba in high amounts can lead to stroke. It can actually cause damage to neurons, those neurons that we need to be remembering things and we need to be functioning. And so, very quickly, the companies making ginkgo biloba walk that back, and they're like, oh wait, oh well, maybe it doesn't cause that, but maybe it could be helpful. And you just watch this huge pivot in the companies, and even with doctors recommending and prescribing ginkgo biloba for memory issues. Initially, they were like, yeah, go and do it, and then they had to walk it all back once we saw that it could be really damaging. The other issue that we have is with a lot of our herbal supplements on the shelves, there is no regulation. And consistently, when just people off the street, you or me, take some of these pills home and start to analyze them, send them off to official labs to say, okay, does it contain ginseng? Does it contain garlic? Does it contain fish oil? What people are finding is consistently They either don't contain the substance that's written on the label that it's supposed to contain, or it definitely doesn't contain it in the amount and quantity that's also being claimed on the label as well. Now, there is some movement to try and get some regulation in the herbal remedy world, but again, we have to be very careful, because sometimes we may be doing more harm than what we are doing good. And this is where I get to that question of, well, why will doctors and why will medical practitioners prescribe these things then, or recommend them? And it comes from that fundamental desire that all humans have had for such a long, long period of time, as long as we have written documents of humans doing things. Humans want to help one another. We don't want there to be pain or suffering. We want to ease and alleviate the pain. But sometimes we can do more harm than good. This is why we need this sound science. This is why we need scientists being ethical in how they are conducting research with these different plant compounds and the data that they are collecting and then extrapolating. Because we want to help and we don't want to do more harm in the process of helping. So hopefully our medicinal plant chapter will get bigger as we discover more of these more home remedies or historical remedies that people have used, and we figure out what it is that is working, if anything at all, and we keep coming up with new compounds. We keep finding new things that we can use to treat and alleviate illness.